Welcome back to Vietnamese Vixens. Today's story comes from a man who thought he'd learn his lesson the hard way in Thailand, only to discover that geography doesn't cure denial. This is Klaus, 52, from Munich, Germany. He spent nearly a decade in Pattaya watching paradise turn into a pricing nightmare. And when he finally escaped to Vietnam, he convinced himself he was getting a second chance at the dream. But some men don't run from their problems. They just find new places to repeat them. If you've ever watched someone ignore every red flag because they wanted so badly to believe this time would be different, drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. And if you've been that person yourself, hit that subscribe button. You're not alone. This is Klaus's story, in his own words. I landed in Da Nang on a Tuesday in March with 2 suitcases, 40,000 euros in the bank, and the kind of optimism that only comes from burning your old life down and walking away from the ashes. 8 years I'd spent in Pattaya. 8 years running a small guest house on Soi Buộc Khao, watching the neighborhood I loved turn into something I didn't recognize anymore. The rent on my building tripled in 18 months. Chinese investors bought up half the block and turned everything into luxury condos nobody could afford. The bars I used to drink at started charging Bangkok prices. The girls got younger and harder. The old crowd, guys like me who'd been there since Pattaya still had some soul left, we were all getting priced out one by one. I sold my lease at a loss just to get out clean. No debt, at least. That was something, but I felt like a refugee from my own retirement dream. I was too young to go back to Germany and rot in some apartment in Munich, watching the rain and eating schnitzel until my heart gave out. I still had life in me. I still wanted to wake up to sunshine and cheap beer and the feeling that my money actually meant something. That's when I started reading the forums. All the Pattaya guys were talking about it, Vietnam, specifically Da Nang. They said it was what Thailand used to be 15 years ago before everything went to hell. Cheap rent, beautiful beaches, women who weren't jaded yet, a government that left you alone as long as you didn't cause trouble. The promised land, basically. And the best part? No crowds. The Chinese hadn't figured it out yet. The Russians were still stuck in Nha Trang. Da Nang was wide open. So I went, just like that. Bought a one-way ticket and told myself this time I was going to do it right. No bar girls, no short-time hotels, no getting sucked into the same trap that swallowed half the expats I knew in Thailand. I was going to find a nice local girl, someone educated, someone real, and build an actual life. Not just exist, live. The first week in Da Nang felt like being born again. I'm not exaggerating. The air was cleaner than Pattaya. The beach was longer and emptier. I rented a small studio apartment near my K beach for $250 a month, furnished, with a balcony that looked out over the water. $250. In Pattaya, that would have gotten me a closet with a broken air conditioner and a view of someone else's laundry. Here, I had space. I had peace. I had possibility. I spent the first few days just walking around, getting my bearings, feeling the city out. Da Nang had this energy that Pattaya had lost years ago. It felt like a place on the edge or something. Like you could still get in early before the boom hit and prices went stupid. The coffee was incredible and cost less than €1. The food was fresh and cheap and everywhere. I could eat like a king for $5 a day. The locals were curious but not hostile. They'd smile, try out their English, ask where I was from. And the women. God, the women. Everywhere I looked, there were these beautiful Vietnamese girls on motorbikes, long black hair flowing out from under their helmets, skin like porcelain, wearing these tight jeans and crop tops or traditional Ao Dai dresses. They didn't have that hardness you saw in the Thai bar girls. They looked softer, sweeter, more innocent maybe. I know how that sounds. But I'm just telling you what I saw. I met Lynn on my 8th day in the city. I was sitting at a little beachside cafe, drinking a Vietnamese iced coffee and watching the waves, when she walked up to take my order. She worked there, apparently. I hadn't noticed her before. She had this quiet presence, not flashy, not trying to get attention, just naturally pretty in a way that didn't need makeup or effort. She was wearing a simple white blouse and black pants, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. When she smiled at me, I swear I felt something shift in my chest. Her English was decent, better than most of the girls I'd met in Pattaya anyway. We made small talk. Where was I from? How long was I staying? Did I like Da Nang? Normal stuff. But there was something in the way she listened, really listened, that made me want to keep talking. She wasn't just going through the motions. She seemed genuinely interested. I came back to that cafe every day for the next week, always ordered the same thing, always hoped she'd be working. Most days she was. We'd chat a little longer each time. I learned she was 28, originally from a small town near Hue, working at a hotel in the city, but picking up shifts at the cafe for extra money. She was saving to help her family, she said. Wanted to take some English courses, maybe work in tourism management someday. She had goals. Ambition. That impressed me. I asked her out on the 10th day, just casually. Maybe dinner sometime? She hesitated, looked down, smiled that shy smile. Okay, she said, maybe. Give me your number. She texted me 2 days later. We met at a little restaurant near the Dragon Bridge. She wore a dress, simple but elegant, and she'd done something different with her hair. She looked stunning. We ate bun cha and drank Saigon beer and talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. Her childhood, my guest house in Pattaya, her dreams, my mistakes. She laughed at my terrible German accented English. I loved the way she covered her mouth when she giggled, like she was embarrassed to be happy. She didn't ask me for anything, not money, not gifts, not even for me to pay for dinner, though of course I did. That was the thing that struck me most. In Pattaya, the girls always had an angle, always. You could see it in their eyes, the calculation, the assessment of how much you were worth and how much they could extract. Lynn wasn't like that. She seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, not as a wallet. We started seeing each other regularly, 2 or 3 times a week at first, then more. She'd take me around on her motorbike, showing me parts of Da Nang the tourists never saw, little markets, hidden temples. Her favorite pho spot where the owner knew her by name. I felt like I was seeing the real Vietnam, not the sanitized version they sold to packaged tourists. She was my guide, my translator, my connection to something authentic. I was falling for her. I knew it. I could feel it happening, and I didn't want to stop it. She made me feel younger than I had in years. When I was with her, I didn't feel like a washed-up German expat running from a failed retirement plan. I felt like a man starting over, a man who still had something to offer, a man who could be loved for who he was, not just what he could provide. One night, about a month after we'd started dating, we were sitting on my balcony watching the city lights, and she leaned her head against my shoulder. We'd been drinking wine, talking about nothing important, just enjoying the silence between words. She turned to me and said, very quietly, "I'm happy when I'm with you." My chest tightened. I put my arm around her, pulled her closer. "Me too," I said. She looked up at me with those dark eyes, and I saw something in them that I hadn't seen in years. Trust, maybe, or the possibility of it. I kissed her forehead. She closed her eyes. This is real, I thought. This time it's actually real. I'd heard all the warnings from my Pattaya friends. Be careful, Klaus. Vietnam girls are the same as Thai girls, just newer to the game. Don't be a fool twice. But sitting there with Lynn on my balcony, feeling her warmth against me, I didn't believe them. They were cynical. Burned out. They'd been in Southeast Asia too long, and it had ruined them. I wasn't like them. Lynn wasn't like those other girls. We had something different. Something genuine. This time, I told myself, I'm doing it right. 3 months in, and I was living a life I'd only imagined back in Pattaya. Lynn was staying at my apartment 4, sometimes 5 nights a week. She'd bring groceries, cook these incredible Vietnamese meals, fill my little studio with smells that made it feel like an actual home instead of just a place I was crashing. She taught me Vietnamese phrases while we ate. "Anna Uum, I love you." She'd giggle when I pronounced it wrong, correct my tones gently, kiss me when I finally got it right. I was teaching her German in return. Simple stuff. Guten Morgen. Ich liebe dich. She'd practice while doing dishes, her accent adorable and clumsy. We had this domestic rhythm that felt so natural, so easy, like we'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. I'd wake up to her brewing Vietnamese coffee in my kitchen, humming softly to herself. I'd come home from walking the beach to find her curled up on my couch watching Korean dramas on her phone. She had a toothbrush in my bathroom, her shampoo in my shower, little pieces of her scattered through my space. I felt like a real person again, not just some expat killing time until death. I had a partner, a companion, someone who wanted to be around me for reasons that felt genuine. The sex was good, but it wasn't the center of everything like it had been in Pattaya. This felt deeper, more substantial, like we were building something that might actually last. But small things started creeping in around the edges. Nothing major at first, just little disruptions to the fantasy I was constructing. Her phone buzzed constantly, day and night. She'd glance at it, frown, type quick responses in Vietnamese, then put it away and smile at me like nothing happened. Family, she'd say when I asked. My mother, my sister. Always some relative with some problem. I didn't push. Vietnamese families were close, I knew that. Different from Germany, where everyone lived separately and barely talked. Then one evening, about 3.5 months in, she was quieter than usual. We'd just finished dinner, sitting on the balcony, and I could tell something was bothering her. She kept checking her phone, biting her lower lip, looking out at the ocean like she was trying to find words in the waves. What's wrong? I asked. She shook her head. Nothing, just tired. Lynn, talk to me. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, very softly, my cousin is sick, in hospital. My aunt cannot pay. I felt my chest tighten, not with suspicion. With sympathy. With the desire to help. How much does she need? I asked. Lynn looked at me with those big, dark eyes, glassy with tears that hadn't fallen yet. Maybe 5 million dong, for tests, medicine. She hesitated. I'm sorry, I shouldn't ask you. This is my family problem. 5 million dong was about 200 euros. Nothing to me. A fortune to her family, apparently. I reached over and took her hand. It's okay, I said. I'll help. Let me help. She cried then. Actually cried. Buried her face in my shoulder and sobbed these tiny, grateful sobs that made me feel like a hero. Like a good man. Like someone who mattered. I held her and stroked her hair and told her it would be okay. I transferred the money the next morning. She kissed me a dozen times, thanked me in Vietnamese and broken German and desperate English. You were so good, Klaus. So good to me. I felt warm inside. Useful. This was what a real relationship looked like, I told myself. Supporting each other, being there during hard times, not just taking selfies on beaches and pretending life was perfect. 2 weeks later, it was her mother. The roof on our family home was leaking, Lynn said. Rainy season was coming. They needed repairs or the whole house would flood. 8 million dong. I didn't hesitate as long this time. I sent it. She cried again. Grateful, loving. We made love that night, and she whispered things in Vietnamese. I didn't understand, but that sounded like promises. Then it was her brother. Motorbike accident. Hospital bills. 4 million dong. Then her sister. School fees. 6 million dong. Then her mother again. Water buffalo died. Family relied on it for farming. Needed to buy another one. 10 million dong. I started keeping a mental tally without meaning to. Each time she asked, I could feel something shift inside me. Not quite suspicion, more like fatigue. The requests were always urgent, always family, always accompanied by tears and apologies and promises that this was the last time, she'd never ask again. But there was always a next time, always another crisis, another emergency, another amount I couldn't quite refuse without feeling like a monster. My savings started looking different in my banking app. Still healthy, but dropping faster than I'd planned. I'd burned through almost 20,000 euros in 3 months. Living expenses, sure. But also Lynn's family, always Lynn's family. I told myself it was temporary. That once things stabilized for her relatives, the requests would stop. That this was just bad luck, a rough patch they were going through. But something else was changing too. Something I noticed but didn't want to name. Lynn was different after every payment. Distant. The first night after I sent money, she'd be warm, affectionate, present. But by the third or fourth day, she'd grow cold again. The sex became less frequent. She was always tired, stressed, had a headache, needed to go home early. We went from 5 nights a week together to 3, then 2, then sometimes just 1. She was on her phone more, a lot more. Sometimes I'd wake up at 2 in the morning and she'd be in the bathroom, door closed, talking to someone in rapid Vietnamese. Family, she'd say when she came back to bed. Crisis with my mother. But her voice hadn't sounded distressed. It had sounded light, almost playful. One night, I couldn't sleep. She was next to me, phone glowing in the dark, scrolling through something. I pretended to be asleep and watched through barely open eyes. She was on Facebook Messenger, video calling someone. A man's voice, I thought. She was laughing, covering her mouth, that same shy giggle she used to give me. The conversation was all Vietnamese, too fast for me to catch anything. After a few minutes, she hung up, set her phone down, and curled up next to me like nothing had happened. Who was that? I asked in the morning, trying to sound casual. My sister, she said without hesitation. She's having problems with her boyfriend. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But doubt had planted itself in my gut like a seed, and it was growing whether I watered it or not. My Pattaya friends started messaging me around that time. Checked in to see how Vietnam was treating me. I'd been posting photos on Facebook, mostly of the beach, a few of Lynn and me at restaurants. They could read between the lines. Be careful, bro, one of them wrote. Same game, different country. These girls are all the same once you scratch the surface. Another one sent me a laughing emoji. You sending money yet? Let me guess. Sick buffalo, broken roof, brother in jail. I felt defensive. Angry. They didn't know Lynn. They didn't understand our relationship. They were bitter old expats who'd been burned and now assumed every woman in Southeast Asia was a scammer. Lynn was different. She had to be. I'd been so careful this time. I'd chosen someone educated, someone with a job, someone who didn't work in bars or massage parlors, someone real. I didn't respond to them, just closed Messenger and tried to forget what they'd said. But I couldn't. The seed of doubt kept growing. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. How Lynn never invited me to meet her family despite all the money I'd sent them. How she always had an excuse when I suggested visiting her hometown. How she'd sometimes smell like different perfume when she showed up at my apartment. Perfume I hadn't bought her. How her stories about her day never quite added up when I asked follow-up questions. One evening, I came home early from the beach and she was already there, which was unusual. She was supposed to be working at the hotel. She looked startled when I walked in, quickly put her phone face down on the table. Hey, she said, smiling but not quite reaching her eyes. I got off early. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Kissed her forehead, went to take a shower, but my mind was racing. When I came out, she was cooking in the kitchen, humming that same tune she always hummed. Everything seemingly normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. That night we had sex, but it felt mechanical, like she was going through motions, performing. When it was over, she rolled away from me, checked her phone, then said she had to go home, early shift tomorrow. She left before I could ask her to stay. I lay in bed alone, ceiling fans spinning slowly above me, listening to the sound of motorbikes outside. My bank balance glowed in my mind. 18,000 euros left, down from 40 in just over 3 months. I was supposed to be building a new life here. Instead, I was watching my safety net disintegrate, while the woman I loved became a stranger who only showed warmth when she needed something. But I couldn't admit it yet, not fully, because admitting it meant accepting that I was the same fool I'd been in Pattaya, that I'd learned nothing, that I'd simply changed the scenery on my own stupidity. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that relationships took work, that real love wasn't always easy. I told myself she cared about me, that the distance was just stress, that things would get better. I told myself I was different from those other guys, that Lynn was different from those other girls. I told myself everything would be fine. The fan kept spinning, the motorbikes kept buzzing, and somewhere deep in my gut, beneath all the denial and hope and desperate self-deception, I knew I was lying to myself. But knowing and accepting are two different things, and I wasn't ready to accept anything yet. 6 months in Da Nang and my savings had dropped to 18,000 euros. I tried not to think about it. Tried not to do the math on how long that would last if things kept going the way they were going. I'd stopped checking my bank account every day because seeing the numbers drop made my chest tight and my hands shake. This was supposed to be my fresh start, my second chance. Instead, I was watching the same movie I'd seen in Pattaya, just with different actors and a Vietnamese soundtrack. Lynn was barely around anymore. Maybe once a week if I was lucky. She always had reasons. Work was busy. Her mother needed her. She was tired, stressed, needed space. That last one started showing up more and more. I need space, Klaus, just for a few days, to think. And then she'd disappear and I'd sit in my apartment alone, staring at my phone, waiting for messages that came less and less frequently. The warmth was gone. The domesticity we'd built had evaporated like morning fog. Her toothbrush was still in my bathroom, but it had been weeks since she'd used it. Her shampoo bottle gathering dust. The apartment felt emptier than it had before I met her, like she'd carved out space in my life and then abandoned it, leaving these hollow rooms I couldn't fill on my own anymore. Then one night in early September, my phone rang at 11 p.m. Lynn. Her voice was panicked, crying, words tumbling over each other in broken English mixed with Vietnamese. Klaus, please, you have to help me. My brother. Police took him. He's in jail. He didn't do anything, I swear. It's a mistake, but they won't release him unless we pay for a lawyer. My stomach dropped. How much? I asked. Already knowing I shouldn't. Already knowing where this was going. She sobbed into the phone. 30 million dong. Klaus, please. He's my only brother. If he goes to prison, our family is destroyed. Please, I'll pay you back. I promise. Every dong. I'll work extra shifts. I'll do anything. 30 million dong was over 1,000 euros. I sat on my bed, phone pressed to my ear, listening to her cry, and felt something crack inside me. Not break, just crack. A fissure opening up between what I wanted to believe and what I knew in my bones was true. Send me the lawyer's information, I said. Let me talk to them first. There was a pause, a brief hesitation, then more crying. Okay, I'll send. Thank you, Klaus. Thank you so much. You save our family. She never sent the information. Instead, she showed up at my apartment 2 hours later. Mascara running, hair messy, wearing clothes I'd never seen before. She threw herself at me, sobbing into my chest, begging me to trust her, telling me there wasn't time for calls and verification. The lawyer needed cash by morning, or her brother would be transferred to a worse facility. Please, Klaus. Please, I love you. Please help us. I held her while she cried, felt her body shaking against mine, smelled perfume I didn't recognize, and something inside me that had been bending finally snapped. I transferred the money, watched the numbers drain from my account, watched 30 million dong disappear into whatever void had been swallowing my savings for 6 months. She kissed me, thanked me, promised me everything would be okay now. Then she left. Said she had to go tell her family. Had to coordinate with the lawyer. She'd be back tomorrow. We'd celebrate. Everything would go back to normal. She didn't come back tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that. Her messages got shorter, more distant. Baby, I'm so busy with family. Baby, I'm so tired. Baby, I need some time. The pet names felt mechanical now, copy-pasted, like she was texting multiple people with the same template responses. A week after I sent the money, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the hotel where she supposedly worked, asked for her at the front desk. The receptionist looked confused. Lynn? No, Lynn works here. I described her. The woman shook her head. Sorry, sir, no one like that. My chest felt hollow. I walked out into the Da Nang heat, traffic buzzing around me, tourists laughing on rented scooters, and I couldn't breathe properly. She'd lied about where she worked, which meant she'd probably lied about everything else. The family crises, the sick relatives, all of it. All of it was a script, a performance, and I'd paid for every act. One tried calling her, straight to voicemail. Messaged her on Facebook, Zalo, WhatsApp. Nothing, just silence. The kind of silence that feels deliberate, final. 2 days later, I went to a bar near the beach, a dive place where expats drank cheap beer and complained about their lives. I sat at the counter, ordered a Saigon, stared at the bottles behind the bar. The bartender was a local guy, maybe 30, decent English. He made small talk. Where you from? How long you been here? The usual. I don't know why I asked. Maybe I just needed someone to confirm what I already knew. You know a girl named Lynn, I said. Late 20s. Works at a hotel supposedly. Or maybe a cafe near my K beach. He laughed. Not a mean laugh. Just tired. Like he'd heard this story 100 times. Bro, he said. There's 1,000 Lyns in Da Nang. But if she's the one I'm thinking, yeah, I know her. Everyone knows her. He looked at me with something like pity. You her boyfriend? I didn't answer. Didn't have to. My face probably said everything. He shook his head, wiped down the bar. She's got like 3-4 boyfriends, man. Always foreigners. Always the same story. Family problems, money problems. She's good at it. I'll give her that. Better than most. But yeah, you're not the only one. Something in me died right there at that bar. Not dramatically. No anger, no shouting. Just this quiet internal collapse. Like a building falling in on itself in slow motion. I finished my beer, paid, walked back to my apartment through streets that didn't feel like paradise anymore. Just streets. Just another city full of people running games on each other. I called Lynn one more time that night. Didn't expect her to answer. She did. Her voice was cold, annoyed. What, Klaus? I want to talk, I said. About everything. About the money. About where you really work. About your brother. She was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. actually laughed. "You're crazy," she said. "You think you own me because you gave me some money? You think I'm your property?" "I never said that," I started, but she cut me off. "You're just like all the old foreign men," she said, her English suddenly much better than it had ever been when we were together. "You come here thinking you can buy a girlfriend because you can't get a woman in your own country. You think because you have money that makes you special. But you're not special, Klaus. You're just old and lonely and desperate." The words hit like punches, each one landing somewhere soft, somewhere true. "I gave you everything," I said, my voice cracking. "I helped your family. I don't have a brother," she said, flatly no emotion. "And my mother's roof is fine." Then she laughed again, that same light giggle I used to love. "You believed everything. So easy." "Why?" I asked. "Just tell me why." "Because you're stupid," she said. "And because I can." Then she hung up. I sat on my bed for a long time. Didn't cry, didn't rage. Just sat there with my phone in my hand, ceiling fan spinning, the sound of Da Nang nightlife filtering through my window. Laughter, music, motorbikes, life, continuing like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just been gutted. I tried to find her the next few days, not to confront her, not even for closure, maybe just to see her one more time, to understand how I'd been so blind, but she'd blocked me on everything. Facebook, Zalo, WhatsApp, phone number disconnected. The cafe where we met, she'd never worked there, I asked. They didn't know anyone named Lynn. She'd just vanished, like she'd never existed, like the whole thing had been a fever dream I'd imagined while my bank account mysteriously drained itself. I met some of the other expats after that. Guys who'd been in Vietnam longer than me, heard their stories. Turned out half of them had similar tales. Different girls, same script, sick buffaloes, broken roofs, brothers in jail. The details changed, but the structure was always identical. These girls had it down to a science. They'd learned from Thai bar girls, improved the system, made it more believable. No bars, no obvious prostitution. Just sweet normal girls with family problems and foreign boyfriends with savings accounts. One guy told me his girlfriend had scammed him for $40,000 over a year. Another guy said he'd married his Vietnamese girl, brought her to Australia, and she'd divorced him 3 months after getting residency. Cleaned out his bank account and moved back to Vietnam. Everyone had a story. Everyone was a cautionary tale they wished someone had told them before they lived it. I'm part of that collection now. Just another dumb foreigner who thought he was different, who thought his girl was different, who learned the same lesson the same painful way as everyone else. I booked a flight back to Munich 2 weeks later. Couldn't stay in Da Nang anymore. Every street reminded me of her. Every cafe, every beach. The whole city felt contaminated by my own stupidity. I'd come here to escape Pattaya, and instead I'd just found a newer version of the same trap. The morning I left, I was standing in the airport, waiting to board, and I saw this Western guy walking hand in hand with a young Vietnamese woman. He looked mid-40s. Happy. In love. She was laughing at something he said, touching his arm, looking at him like he was the most important person in the world. I recognized that look. I'd seen it on Lynn's face 6 months ago when she was reeling me in. I wanted to walk over, wanted to warn him, wanted to say, "Listen, brother, I know you think she's different, but she's not. I know you think you're different, but you're not. I know you think this time will end differently, but it won't. Save yourself, save your money. Go home before she destroys you." But I didn't. I just stood there with my carry-on bag, watching them walk toward the exit, her head on his shoulder, him smiling like he'd won the lottery. Maybe his story would be different. Maybe he'd be the exception. Maybe his girl really was genuine and kind, and really did love him for who he was and not what he could provide. But probably not. Probably he was just me 6 months ago, full of hope and denial and the desperate need to believe that paradise still existed somewhere, and that he deserved to find it. I boarded my plane, watched Da Nang disappear beneath the clouds, felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just this empty exhaustion, this bone-deep tiredness that comes from fighting reality and losing. Vietnam wasn't different. The girls weren't different. The game wasn't different. I was just the same fool in a different country. And that's the truth I have to live with now.